So I want to introduce you very quickly to project financing, how it's structured, the source of financing, some risks issues, and how those risks can be mitigated. We have a development plan which aims to move Ghana to having a GDP per capita of 60,000 by 2057. Now, the funding requirement, when it comes to social services, including road infrastructure, is 1.3 trillion, and this translates into 2.3 billion per annum. Okay, for infrastructure. We're looking at various types of infrastructure, power, oil and gas, various forms of PPP arrangements, including road concession, projects, and then, of course, other forms of infrastructure. So we're looking at all these infrastructure and how do we finance them. The theory behind this is that, and this is proposed by two gentlemen, Modigliani and Miller, they said that the capital structure is irrelevant as long as the firm's investment decisions are taken as given. So basically what they say is that if you find investments which have enough returns to benefit people who invest, then it doesn't matter the source of the financing. So we should be able to separate the investment decision from the financing decision. If it is viable, then we could use any source of funding to make it happen. So that is a concept here. So what we are saying here is that if we think that we need to maintain our network and that there is a link between investment in infrastructure and economic returns, then it doesn't matter whether it's government who is funding it, it's being funded from road fund, or it is funded by, other forms of funding like, road concessioning. And this is part of the whole concept of the public-private partnership. We normally will have two parties here, the government and the private sector. The government has the national interest, want to make sure that the project benefits the populace. It also helps government to achieve its other policies and provide incentives for investors, manufacturers, so that they can site businesses by taking advantage of the roads. This also helps us coordinate planning and development strategies, especially issues around regional integration. In Ghana, this is critical because we aim at bridging the rural-urban gap and then the southern and northern development gaps. When it comes to the private sector, the motive is always about profits. Okay, so they may not necessarily have to align with broader national strategy. As long as they can get returns on their investment, they're ready to go there. They also have access to technology. They have access to human resources in terms of expertise. They also have access to capital. I mean, these days, World Bank will easily, through any of its agencies like IFC, will be ready to basically give loans to a private entity that want to invest compared to even governments. And we have private individuals, companies who are getting favorable, interest rates because they are able to charge users and get returns on their investment to pay the loans. So if that is the case, then we should think about how government and private sector can partner to leverage on their individual strengths to deliver road infrastructure for the benefits of the people. To make this happen, there are various ways that this can be structured. One way is to say, look, we want government to still be responsible for provision of infrastructure, but we want government to be more efficient in doing this. And so we can introduce a public sector reform Currently, this is happening, and we have some agencies that are being piloted through the Office of the Special Presidential Advisor. We have DVLA, we have Passport Office that are being piloted. But we could also make a case for agencies or ministry, agency like Ghana Highway Authority or Urban Roads to be involved in the public sector reforms, where, though they are public sector agencies, but they also act, like private entities who then, look for source of funding to invest in the sector and make returns. The other option is a typical public-private partnership, which can also take several forms. We can have operating and maintaining concession. I know we have that in some of the agencies. I've heard that the performance-based contracts for maintaining roads are also informed by this operating and maintaining concession, where contractors are required to maintain a certain level of service on section of the network, and they are paid for that. All right, then we could also have a build, operate, and transfer. So here we're talking about a private entity coming to completely build a new road, rehabilitate an existing road, and operate it through tolling and transfer the road to the government at the end of the concession period. We could also have strategic equity partnerships, where certain core activities of the road agencies can be outsourced to, other private firms who can do that more efficiently. So, for example, issues about car parking, even traffic maintenance of traffic lights. These are all aspects of operations that can be outsourced in a strategic equity partnership. Then we have full privatization. I'm not sure we will want to get there now, where the whole sector is basically handed over completely, just like maybe Vodafone, Ghana Telecom became Vodafone through full privatization. We have experimented some of these in the past. The Ghana Water Company some time ago went through an operating and maintaining concession with the arrangements we had with Aqua Vitens Run. So these were all experiments which find out whether we have the needed infrastructure, institutional arrangement for these levels of public-private partnership. Why do we need this PPP at all? You remember during the time of Kufuor, he talks about making the private sector an engine of growth. So we're talking about the need to reduce government's role in the economy. And this we do through what we call off-balance sheet financing. So we are talking about a situation where now that Ministry of Finance says we don't have enough money for capital expenditure, can we have some of these social infrastructure like roads still being financed, but off government balance sheets? We also see that PPP allows for innovation, flexibility, and resourcefulness when it comes to infrastructure provision. We also think that when road infrastructure is financed by the private sector, they include the entire life cycle costing and not just, the cost of maintenance. And so we see more efficiency when it comes to project pricing and even the appropriateness of the design. The value of PPP arrangement is about risk apportionment. We realize that every project carries risk. And so PPP allow us to assign certain risks to parties who are best able to manage them. And so that is basically the concept. So this leads us to the concept of project financing. And here we're talking about financing the development of an asset where the financing is to be provided by way of debt and is to be repaid principally as of revenue generated by the operation of the assets. So the financing comes from different sources. We can have banks, institutional investors. There could be equity, sponsors. We also have development financing. So for example, IFC provides funding for some of these. There are some, existing deals when it comes to project financing. I think a typical one will be the 21 billion Channel Tunnel, also called the Euro Tunnel, the tunnel between France and the UK. It was financed through these project finance arrangements. We have, for example, the 1.4 billion aluminium melter in Mozambique, and then the 4 billion Chad Cameroonian pipeline, which were also examples of major project finance deals. All right, so the project finance investment is really quite low in Africa. Africa and Middle East constitutes only about 12%, but in Asia, this is quite significant. But the trend over the years has been increasing. The characteristic of these project finance transaction is that it's cash flow related. So what happens here is that all the investors agree that they are going to receive their returns on their investment purely from revenue generated from the assets. All right, because of the time, let me try. But the disadvantage is that the transaction costs are very high because of the fact that we need to create an independent entity that will manage the relationship between the public and the private entities. It also requires disclosure of proprietary information and strategic deals, because every party wants to know what is happening, and there's nothing that can be done in the secret, even when the government is involved. We have this, government is a party to it. Government wants to protect public interest. We also have the sponsor. The key issue here is that there will be no recourse or limited recourse to the sponsor. Then we have the lenders, take different forms, and they are also ready to contribute and get adequate returns on their investments. For the lenders, their main objective is to get their money back. All right, so if the cash flow promises sufficient returns, then they are ready for it. And then we have the project company. Basically, they will manage all the relationship between all the parties, but they don't carry any risk. We also have the engineering, procurement, and construction contractor. It usually be a joint ventureship, a consortium who will plan, design, procure, and do the actual construction. Usually it will be a turnkey arrangement with performance bond, and all of these will look forward to cash flows for payment of their costs. We have the operator who will manage the investment on a day-to-day basis, will also be paid from revenue generated from the operation of the asset. We have insurance companies who are involved because of the level of risk involved in such transaction. Then, of course, there are professional advisors. If it's a toll road, you have a traffic advisor, a model auditor, and various forms of advisors to help efficient operation of the asset. The risk usually will be the completion rate, because you have a concession period of, say, 40 years. If the construction delays for 5 years, it means we have lost revenue for 5 years. So completion rate is key. Here, the way to cure it will be to select contractor of repute so that the project can be completed on time. Because we have to charge local currency, so the pricing is also a risk. You're paying your debt in dollars, but then you are collecting toll revenue in cedis. So these are all issues: operational risk, environmental risk, technology risk. But of course, the most critical one is a political risk. But it looks like Ghana, we have gone quite far in terms of, managing our politics, and so investor confidence is quite high. You need to be concerned also about interest rates risks, insolvency risks, and also currency risks. Some of these can be managed through hedging. I will conclude by talking about how the risk can be shared among the parties. We have the concession awarder, which is the government, normally to bear the approval risks for the road, making sure that we have the road must be made available, and it is the government who will ensure that. Approval rates for statutory procedures, geological risks, archaeological risks. Yeah, we expect the concessionaire to manage. Archaeological risks, depending on the nature of it, can be shared. But also construction costs, completion rates, these are rates that should be managed by the concessionaire. Force majeure can be shared. Operational, traffic volume risk, all that can be shared. I just want to emphasize why traffic volume risk is so important, because traffic is the main source of the financing. And so if the traffic levels or projections are not met, it means the revenue target will not be met. The Eurotunnel project failed because of traffic volume risk. So at the start of the project, they forecasted over 50 years the traffic volume, but a lot changed just within 10 years of operation, that rail and road traffic reduced significantly because of cheaper airfares. And so a lot of the traffic moved from the road to the air. And that's really affected their profits. And basically, they had to be bailed out by the government. All right, so thank you very much. This is what I have to share with you.